well, at the end of this life, if I, in my life, and I've still done a lot of things unconsciously, I will come back, and you can call it reincarnation, whatever it is. I'll come back in another form, and I'll be more informed than I was previously, more conscious. Welcome to Settling is Not an Option. I'm Adam Nebbs, and I'm here with my co-host, Amanda Stanhope. This show is for anyone out there who feels like they've settled for an unfulfilling life. Whether you've settled in a relationship, the work that you do, or how you feel about yourself, we're here to tell you that settling is not an option. If you're liking the show, please follow us on Spotify, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any feedback about the show or want to recommend a topic, you can email us at cheerstoNotSettling@gmail.com. Finally, to conclude the plug, if you feel so inclined, you can donate to us on Ko-fi, where we're aiming to buy some new audio equipment.
All right, so today we are going to be talking about the meaning of life. a very simple topic.
Simple one.
And we're going to try to talk about, so last week we interviewed Gabby Kovalenko, and I probably just, or Kovalenko, I don't know, I probably just slaughtered her name. But at any rate, we interviewed Gabby, and she was awesome. And she is studying, not metaphysics,
natural medicine and
quantum physics. That's what I'm trying to say. Quantum physics. And so we had a great discussion about the universe and how everything's connected, and us being vibrational beings, and religion, and just all kinds of good stuff. So we wanted to follow that conversation up with a conversation that Adam and I are going to have about those topics, and kind of just flush out our thoughts on that. And also because Adam's been having some spiritual awakening of his own the past few days, so we're going to get into that. And I've been reading a lot of Eckhart Tolle lately, so we'll probably get into that a little bit. So it's going to be a pretty interesting show. And as always, we want to keep the conversation just flowing and just have a natural conversation, but we do want to make sure that we come back to some points to make sure that our audience gets some value from what we're talking about. So there's 3 points that we're going to try to hit, and then at the end of the show, we'll come back to them and make sure that we did actually hit on them all. So the 3 points are: don't settle for believing that you can't change your mindset or even your genetic makeup. Don't settle for thinking you have to be religious in order to believe in God. And don't settle for someone else's explanation of the reason you're here. Create your own explanation. So that's what we're going to try to talk about. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Adam, because, like I said, he's been pretty geeked the last couple of days thinking about all of this, and has had a couple pretty cool experiences. So you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, after you and Gabby talked a bit about Dr. Joe Dispenza, I've been listening to quite a few of his videos, and I found them really eye-opening. And there was a clear thread, I suppose, running through all of his videos, which is about neuroscience and how, all of the parts of our brain influence how we perceive the world, how we create our own realities, how I think one of the lines he uses is our personality creates our personal reality. Okay. And we just need to fire and wire our brain in a way that forms a new reality, which is really hard to do because it takes us out of the known and into the unknown. And when we're in the unknown, we don't like that.
Right.
But he talked a lot about how, I think it was 80,000 thoughts a day that we have, and 80% of those thoughts are the same thoughts. Okay. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah, because even 80% sounds kind of low, though, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah,
I would almost kind of expect to be like 90%, but whatever. It's a lot.
Yeah,
lot.
It could even be that figure. I'd have to go back and look at what he said.
Yeah, but right.
But he talks about as we get to the age of 35, we've pretty much just created a set of habits that we live, and we just unconsciously go about our day.
Right.
And I've been, as Amanda has as well, on a journey for a while now, where I've thought that I've awakened to how the world is, but been quite unaware of how unconscious I have been. Yeah. Because daily I'd been quite frustrated at getting annoyed at silly things, or seeing the world in a certain way or falling back into old habits. But hearing, what Dr. Dispenza was saying, I was like, well, it's because I'm creating that reality off the past, like I'm not trying to forge any new thoughts or any new connections in my brain. So yeah, it made for a fun day yesterday. I just was walking around. People must think that I was a crazy person, but I was just walking around the city.
You're that crazy guy just staring at everyone.
Just going, stop staring at me. This is weird. But just thinking about frequency and people that I was walking past, what kind of frequency they're on. But one thing, I suppose, that I kept coming back to, and I don't know, I thought it was interesting, was this idea that we're all constructs. So for me, and Eckhart Tolle talks about this as well, and the idea of me and my life and how that's how we craft meaning. But I've started to think of myself as the construct known as Adam Nebbs.
Okay.
And everything that I see, everything that I give meaning to is based on 32 years of constructing the construct known as Adam Nebbs.
Mm-hmm.
And I've infused everything with meaning, things that I see, things that I do. All of my emotional reactions are based on what that construct views as meaningful. So, for example, I was thinking about my PhD, and that's something that's important to me, and I give it meaning. And things like stress or anxiety or worries about the future are because I've imbued that with meaning. But if I was to remove the meaning from that, there'll still be world consequences in that. If I just was to say, I don't care about this anymore, I'm not going to hit my milestones, or I'm not going to do any writing today, whatever, there'll be consequences in that. People will hold me accountable. But the emotional feelings in me will be gone because I don't give meaning or power to that anymore. So I think it kind of ties into what Joe Dispenza was saying, in that you've just got to be fully conscious every day. Like, look at things, notice emotions, notice thoughts, notice how you look at things, because ultimately we have 100% power of them. And it's all based on the construct that we've created. So if we know that we're a construct, then we have the ability to amend that construct. Mm-hmm. And as such, hopefully live better, happier lives. Like we really determine that. So that's it. I'm not sure how coherent it is. It's still. I was going to
say, let's come back to a couple of things there, because for our audience who might not be as aware or as conscious about what these. So how would you describe consciousness, like in your own words?
That's a big one.
I know, because I was trying to think of it too.
Because I think definitely would refer anyone to listen to that, to the podcast from Mark Gober that I mentioned last week, because he talks specifically about what consciousness is. But I like to think of really what we are is we come from energy. So if we just think of energy, vibration, whatever you want to call it, we come from energy.
The frequency that you mentioned, being everybody's on different frequencies. That's part of that.
Yeah.
That's the vibration you're talking about.
Yeah. And then we come into being in this physical manifestation, what we construct as a physical manifestation. But ultimately, this is just a construct we created. I like to think that whether it's me, you, my neighbor down the street, they are all part of this higher stream of consciousness. So it's just all energy, the way I perceive it at the moment. And I'm still very much on a journey of figuring this out. Like, I think Gabby Kovalenko has a much better understanding of it because she's been looking at it for a lot longer. But it is ultimately, if we remove the construct element from it and just say, all right, so Amanda is simply energy. And she is, that's ultimately who you are. You are connected to everyone else in this stream of energy, but we're currently viewing our world through this physical manifestation. And for you, you've constructed that manifestation as Amanda.
Right.
And Amanda will experience frustrations, or sorry to bring you into this, but...
No, that's cool. I pick on you all the time, so it's about time you picked on me a little bit.
But, you will experience the world through this construct. But then if ultimately you were to step out of that construct and say, well, no, I'm actually energy. I'm a stream of consciousness. I'm connected to everyone else, every other thing on this planet.
Right.
All of a sudden your problems disappear.
True.
And who knows, like in the face of adversity, true adversity, like when things really go wrong, that'll be the interesting thing as to how quickly you become unconscious again.
Right.
And move
you're
back
kind
into
of in that fight or flight mentality.
Yeah.
And
so
almost
that will
in
be
a survivalist mentality that consciousness goes away.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think in the day-to-day simple stuff, it's probably easy to stay conscious. But I think the biggest test for all of us.
I don't know if it's easy.
Yeah,
it's easy for us because we've talked. Well, it's not even easy for us. I won't say that. It's not easy for me. I think it's somewhat easier because we've been studying it for quite a long time.
Yeah, you're right. Yes. I'm sorry, audience. Ostracizing the audience.
No. Thanks, Adam. No.
Don't settle for what I say about your level of consciousness.
Right.
But yeah, that's how I'd view consciousness, I guess.
Well, and I guess I know I was trying to think of it because obviously I've read a lot about it. I have watched a lot of videos because I'm a video person. I'm on YouTube a lot. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos about consciousness, but it's still something I have a hard time describing when I'm asked the question. And so I was kind of thinking of that as you were talking, but to me too, it's the voice behind, or it's not the voice, it's the being behind the voice in your head. Because if you are observing the voice in your head, you're hearing that voice in your head, that can't be you. Because you can't observe yourself or whatever. So it's like it's your inner being that is, I guess, part of your subconscious. Well, no, it wouldn't be your subconscious. Okay, so this gets into like psychology a little bit. Because there's 3 levels of consciousness. There's let me see if I get this right. There's subconsciousness. So subconsciousness is where you're completely unaware of what's going on. And like breathing is subconscious. You don't think about it. It just happens. Or most of the time. And then then there's subconscious. Unconscious is when you could be aware of it, but you're choosing not to be. So like you're getting in an argument with someone. You could become aware that you're being irrational, but you choose not to become aware that you're becoming irrational because you're trying to protect your ego or you're trying to protect yourself in some way. And then conscious is when you are aware. I guess it's when you're aware of what normally would be unconscious. So you're aware that you're becoming irrational and you can stop. At that point, then you can change your action and decide to go a different route. So when you're in an argument with someone, at first, it's going to be unconscious, and you're just going to be reacting based on past events. But then you can notice that you're doing that, and you become conscious. And then once you become conscious, you can decide, all right, I'm going to cool down. I'm going to try to understand where this person's coming from. Or maybe you decide you're just ready to have a fight that day. And you're going to go forward that way. But maybe that's a good way to think of it.
Yeah. It's a complicated thing.
It is complicated. It's one of those things, and like I said with Gabby, it makes complete sense and no sense at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like my really primitive understanding of quantum mechanics is, and it was in a book that I read. I can't remember the exact name, but I think it's called The End of Mr. Y. So I might get send you the link to it later because it's a great book and I'd love to reread it now. And that was just talking about the basic concepts, of quantum mechanics being, when you see something, it comes into existence, and like tying it into like concept like Schrodinger's cat and all those kind of things.
Like what?
And I'd love Schrodinger's cat, like that experiment of, I'm going to completely blunder it up.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
But it was, I think the basic principle of it, and I get this wrong, so any people who are listening who have any good understanding of quantum mechanics.
Leave us a comment and correct Adam.
Leave us a comment and say, Adam, you're an idiot. The construct known as Adam is an idiot. But it's this idea of just, I suppose, subatomic particles and atoms and how they can only exist, I think, when, like, they exist differently when viewed, as opposed to if they're not being viewed. And
yeah.
I
Okay.
think we'd have to look over it
but we kind of talked about that with Gabby a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting, because for me, I've perceived that as, if I can't see someone, they don't exist.
Yeah.
And that's quite a trippy thing to think of, really, because it's like they are in flux. They could be basically they're subatomic particles, or whatever it is, whatever you see as being made up of. They're all in flux until I see them, then they all come into the construct of that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like,
it's really crazy. I don't know. It's almost scary in a way.
It is, but
it's exciting, but also scary. And like, I think like, this is kind of what I cut myself off from saying when we were talking before the show, but I like the idea of being conscious, but at some level, I don't want to be conscious because it's kind of scary. You know,
it's like the Matrix, isn't it? It's like, like, I mean, like, anytime I kind of talk about this stuff, I always do go back to the Matrix and think, like, those guys had something there, because we are all kind of, and we're in this like world that wants us to stay, I suppose, in the Matrix. The world doesn't want you to be conscious, because if you're conscious, you start to look at things differently. You start to things, no longer will the Prada handbag, and sorry for anyone who likes Prada, but that's just an example. The Prada handbag doesn't have as much importance if you're stepping outside of the construct of you and saying, well, actually, I'm a higher stream of consciousness. I'm connected to everyone else in the world. So a $8,000 handbag doesn't really matter to me, but it might matter to my construct. Like, I guess, we wouldn't want to think that way, but I think it'll make life a lot easier, because
it would. Although I wonder if it does, because here's why I think this. So, and we were kind of talking about this before the show too, but as you become more conscious yourself, you become more aware of how unconscious other people are.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that could become frustrating. And I think it could also maybe lead to feelings of loneliness or of not belonging, because all of a sudden now you don't know where you fit, because you're so much different than everyone else. Because I do think most people do operate unconsciously. I'm getting subconscious, unconscious, conscious are all like mixed up in my head. And I mean, I did, and I still do. A lot of things I do are unconscious. And I definitely lived unconsciously for a lot of my life. And although I guess I've kind of always had this awareness too. And maybe that's where I've struggled, because I've always tried to go along doing what I thought I was supposed to do. Like we've talked about my life before, and how I kind of went through my life checking off boxes unconsciously and doing what I thought society wanted me to do, or what I thought I should do. And then, but I've always had this weird awareness at the same time in the background. So that's probably, now that I think about it, that probably led to a lot of problems in my life. Because not problems, I guess they became good at the end of the day. There were struggles I went through that have worked out to turn me into the person I am now. But yeah, as I'm thinking about it, I lived pretty unconsciously for a long time, and I think most people do, because that's what we're taught to do.
Yeah.
And so at any rate, that's why I say I think most people are unconscious. And then when you become conscious, it might be harder to relate to other people. Yeah. Although I guess if you're truly, and I'll let you come back to or respond to this point here, but I guess if you were truly conscious, you wouldn't think about that either, because you would just see yourself as one with everyone.
Well, yeah, that's what I hope.
Yeah.
But I think it is literally going above all I can think about is the construct. It is. So, I know that if you get offended at someone, so, like what would happen for me all the time would be somebody would say like, Or, okay, I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day of a girl who had finished her PhD in like record time.
Yeah.
Most of her publications were in like the top journals, won awards. And it was an interesting experience that first I felt it through my ego, which was, well, like, I want to be at that level. Why am I at that level?
Sure.
But then that faded probably a lot quicker than it would have in the past.
Yeah.
And that I went, well, really though, that's just the ego of me as a construct responding to something, to stimuli, and going, I'm frustrated by that, and I'm now looking at it through the filter of my construct. Whereas really, if I step outside of that and I say, well, that doesn't matter. Like, if we see ourselves as all connected, somebody else's success,
yeah,
is a success for everyone, as long as it's contributing in a good way to the collective, and that's
True.
probably getting a little bit too kind of like vague. But I guess one other thing,
it's all kind of vague though. We're kind of talking about some vague issues here, or some big concepts.
Really big concepts.
But we probably should say again what the ego is too. So like in this context, when we're talking about ego, we're basically talking about your identity. Basically, right? Or would you describe it a different way?
Yeah, I'd say that. I'd say, this like belief in who you are and
who
what's
you think
important
you
to
are.
you.
Yeah.
And then looking at other people's identities. Yeah.
Like when you exactly. Yeah, I was gonna follow that up with something, but
yes, we've even like we're now just doing something called being, and just like thinking for a moment. This is a lot of stuff.
It is.
But I think it's an important thing. I think the more this is discussed, and I really do believe the more this is discussed, the more we become awakened to these things, the easier it'll be for other people to wake up to it. Because I was thinking about with Joe Dispenza, 10, 20 years ago, like, were we talking about this? Probably not. So like, it would be a lot harder for you to wake up to these things if no one's talking about it. Whereas having a figure like him and all these others like Eckhart Tolle and stuff, it's easier because you can sit down. They've got a much probably easier way of understanding it than what we're talking about here. And that's because they've done it for however many years and they've got a really keen understanding. So yeah, like whatever form it comes in, I think it does help the collective get there.
Well, and I was gonna say about Joe Dispenza too. What I really like about him, because the way my mind works in my background, I used to be a financial statement auditor for about 12 years. I did that. I'm very much evidence-based. Let's put it that way. Yeah. I'm someone who needs to see some evidence. And so anyways, what I like about him is he's kind of the best of both worlds, because he's a neuroscientist. So he comes with a scientific background and the studies and like, the peer-reviewed studies and blah, blah, blah. But he also brings in the spiritual side of it too. And so it's like, it's the best of both worlds, because you get proof of these things that have been taught for centuries, but nobody could ever prove them before. Like meditate, like the power of meditation. And because he has all kinds of meditations, which I didn't realize that until recently. But he has all different meditations that are supposed to help you like boost your immune system. And
oh, really?
Like just all different things. And they've actually shown how the meditation changes your brain.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'll back up too and just mention, because a lot of people might not be familiar with neuroplasticity, but the fact that your brain is constantly changing, and you can change the pathways in your brain depending on the thoughts that you have. So every thought that you have creates a pathway, and the more similar thoughts you have or linear thoughts you have, you strengthen that pathway. So if you are constantly, I guess the thought or the way the meditations work is you're reinforcing this thought that you're going to have a strengthened immune system, and you're telling yourself that over and over again, and your body reacts to it. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I know
I'm just like just thinking about the
it's just so crazy, though, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, though, because I do think our bodies are meant to maintain themselves and protect themselves. And we probably get in the way.
Well, we probably do.
Our minds get in the way and our thoughts get in the way of our bodies just doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was saying that, you know, your body can't tell the difference between the event happening and you like feeling the event or thinking about the event.
It doesn't know if it actually happened. Your mind doesn't know the difference about whether it actually happened or you just thought it happened.
Yeah.
Your body reacts the same way.
I think we should test this. I think on the show we should commit to we probably want to start with baby steps. We probably
I'm nervous. I'm like, what are we going to do, Adam?
But like commit to thinking of something and testing, you know, like whether you want to call it manifesting or meditating, you know, and bringing your body into a new reality. Like, I don't know, like maybe even just something that we can test and like just do the simple thing of constantly thinking it's so, you know,
and
like
see if it, I have an idea.
Okay.
Mine. Okay.
For you.
I have this constant knot right here in the back of my shoulder.
Okay.
It's from using my mouse, or I'm fairly certain it's from using my mouse all the time. And it's always there. I mean, sometimes it's better than others, and sometimes it really bothers me, and whatever. But that would be something to be interesting to see if I can get rid of that. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, I like that. I'm thinking I want to try, and so like I've got this app for this guy Wim Hof. Have you heard of Wim Hof?
I've heard that. Yeah, we haven't talked about him though, have we?
No, I don't think so.
He sounds familiar.
But he does all kinds of crazy things. Like he'll go and like.
Oh yes, we have. We haven't talked about him on the show, but okay.
Yeah, but he has this breathing app, and like he can hold his breath for like a stupid amount of time.
Yeah,
and I want to see if I can convince my brain or my body to like hold my breath for longer than I've ever held it before, and maintain that, because I think the longest I can hold my breath is like 2.5 minutes or something.
2.5 minutes.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Is that a long time?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, cool. Okay.
You really think you can do it for 2.5 minutes?
Yeah.
Really, that's a long time. I'm thinking I could do like 25 seconds.
Yeah, so I would like to see if I can like hold my breath for like 3-4 minutes.
Okay,
would be great. Yeah,
that'd be interesting. Although you might start losing some brain cells.
Yeah, yeah, true.
Because how does that work?
Yeah, okay. That's another side. I hope I don't lose brain cells. But maybe we set a challenge. Like when would we want to look back on this?
Well, I guess 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
If we're going to interview someone next week, and then the next week it's just the two of us, we could.
Yeah.
Does that sound
okay?
Good?
So in 2 weeks, we'll tell the audience how we're going.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah. We'll do our own little experiment.
Now we have to do this.
Well, yeah, I'll do it. I would like to get rid of that. I mean, I have noticed actually, if I do deep breathing exercises and I focus on the area, like I try to like focus and think that the breath is going there, it does loosen up. So if I did that, and I just don't do it enough, but I'm thinking if I did do it every day, I bet it would help a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I don't do it. It's one of those things that I just don't practice enough. But
it's so cool. I think like it's this idea, I think, of the quantum field, that anything's possible. I love it. Like if we test it with these like little baby steps, like it opens up a world of possibility. Like we could really, you know, train our brains to do all sorts of amazing things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm curious because like I hear these things, and he's obviously an amazing speaker, like has the science and all that. But of course, there's still part of me that goes, nah, like can that really work? Like, you know, do we know for certain this works? But yeah, I think if we test it, it'd be interesting to see.
All right, we'll do it.
Yeah,
you're on. We'll see.
So
all right, so I should look at my notes of what we were going to talk about here.
So, God. We were going to talk about God. Do you want to talk about God?
Yes, I do, actually. Where, where do you want to start?
Look, anywhere's fine, anywhere.
So I guess what's interesting to me, okay, so I'll back up and I'll give my view on God quickly. So for a long time, so I was raised Christian, but I didn't go to church real regularly. I mean, we weren't like we went to church every Sunday or anything. But I mean, I was raised that way. I did go to Sunday school occasionally and whatever. And so I knew some of the teachings, but it never really clicked with me. Like a lot of it just didn't make sense. Even when I was a kid, like just a lot of it didn't make sense. So, and I never really, like a lot of what religion teaches just seemed contradictory to me, as far as like it will try, like Christianity will try to tell you that God is love and loves everybody unconditionally, but at the same time, he's going to send you to hell if you tell a lie. And I'm like, okay, something about this just doesn't make sense to me. And, just stuff like that. And I mean, that's a whole other episode. We could talk just about that. But the point is, it just never really resonated with me. And so I never really been a religious person. And so I've kind of struggled with trying to figure out what I do believe. And for a short period of time, I thought maybe I was an atheist. But then I figured out I'm really not, because even if you choose to be an atheist, you've subscribed to some kind of belief system. You're believing that you don't believe. And I'm like, no, that's not it either, because I don't think I have an answer. I just don't know. I'm not going to hitch my wagon to anything. So I was thinking, okay, so I'm not an atheist. So then I'm like trying to figure it out. But the more I've come to learn about consciousness and about, I guess, quantum physics and neurology or whatever, neuroscience, the way our brains work and all the stuff. And it all is kind of connected to show me kind of what I've always thought, is just that God is in all of us. And it's the connectedness of all of us that is God. And we're all creating this experience that we're having. And again, that's God. So, and I guess, although I do think there's some higher power, it seems to me there has to be, although I don't know what it is, but it's one of those things where it doesn't make sense that there's a higher power, but at the same time, it seems like there has to be one, because it doesn't make sense that there isn't one either. So I'm like, I'm just going to go with the theory that there is one, because that's just what my gut tells me. And so anyways, the point is, it's been interesting for me to see how all of this is interconnected, and how, like, the teachings of the Bible, if you look at even the Christian Bible through the lens of what we've been talking about today, through consciousness and quantum physics, you start to reinterpret what the Bible is saying, and it makes a lot more sense. And what the Bible is saying actually coincides a lot more with what we've been talking about today, and talking about trying to bring people together instead of separating people, which religion tends to separate people. And now I feel like I'm just babbling. But
No, I think there's lots of good points. I'm just like,
you have to add.
I'm just trying to think of, there's so many points there. So, like, I went to a Catholic college when I was back in New Zealand.
Okay.
And when I came, and I used to pray every single night, like religiously, just every single night would pray.
Yeah.
And then when I came to Australia, I felt like really compelled to go to church. And I went to church every Sunday by myself. And
so you were raised Catholic, I assume, or did you just go to a Catholic college?
I had like a bit of a funny journey in that, like, I wasn't raised a Catholic, so I wasn't baptized or didn't go through communion or anything like that. Luckily got into like a college that, most of the people there were raised Catholic.
Okay.
I did experience at that college some level of discrimination, that when people found out I hadn't been baptized and things like that, they kind of looked at me like, why are you here then? And so that was my first kind of experience of this institutionalized religion.
Yeah.
The separateness, which was like, well, I don't get it. And I probably experienced it more so when I started to go to church here, that I started to like, I really enjoyed the teachings. I really enjoyed some of the connections with people, but I experienced this one time where at this time, right, I was a poor uni student. I had no money.
Yeah.
And the collection plate came around and I had no money on me. And they said, oh, have you got some money to give to the church? And I said, oh, no, I don't. And like, I can still remember the girl's face as being like, and she was like, oh, don't you care about like giving back to your church? And like, I will still never forget that I was like, hold on a sec.
Right.
And then like when I was actually standing outside of the church, I then saw the priest later on that day driving out of the garage in a BMW.
Of course. I knew you were going to say something like that.
And so like for me, I thought, well, hold on a sec. Like, why does giving money to the church, like if there is a God that, you know, the Catholic Christian faith, you know, has this perception of God or Jesus or whatever it is. It's like, well, why would that entity look down and go, oh, you didn't give money that day, so we're going to judge you and think that you're not committed to this religion? I was like, if there is a God, the God would not.
No, that makes no sense.
And, so that was an interesting thing. And after that, I stopped going to church. I also stopped praying after a few things happened in my life, which were quite difficult events. Like my sister got really sick and actually lost mobility for a while. So she was in a wheelchair for a while. Luckily, she's not anymore. And other things like I got really sick. And they just kind of made me think, you know, when I was praying, I was thinking, well, hold on a sec. Like, why are these things happening to me? It's that typical, you know, I'm praying to God every day and committing, but bad things are still happening to me. So I had a very immature kind of view of the world at that stage.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think we want to construct, we're trying to create a construct.
Right, exactly.
God, this omnipotent, omnipresent being that's constantly watching, constantly judging. When you die, you're going to go to heaven or hell, and you know you'll be judged based on the actions of the. I think that's, again, we want to create that construct, and that's great. And I really am for that. If that's how you view religion and God and higher meaning, that's good. If that gives you purpose, if that makes you feel good every day, that's great.
And I think that can bring you to consciousness.
Yeah, 100%.
I think you can get to the same end result. It's just a different way to get there if you're doing it with a pure heart.
Yes.
In pure intentions.
Yes. So, like, to your point about atheism, is I think, you know, I've watched some talks with some of the key people in atheism, and I found, again, it was very separate. It was very much like the church are idiots. Here's all the issue with like the Catholic faith. And again, I'm like, okay, well, but you're straight away creating separateness. You're saying that you're better than these people who believe in God in maybe a fundamentalist sense. You're better than them. And again, I'm like, no, that's not right either.
Right.
I think it's really, we will create meaning however we want. And, you know, but like ultimately I do think you're right that God is in all of us. And I think it is, I just like to think of it as this, like, this stream of energy, and that we all have this higher consciousness. Because I like the idea of, if we all viewed each other as exactly the same, it would be a much easier world. So, you know, if I was to say, you know, I look at you and compare you to Donald Trump, or to like,
thanks a lot, Adam.
You know, or like big figures, right? So we'd say Donald Trump right now, I don't know, like one of the big figures in the world.
All right,
right?
I got to see where this is going. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
Or like the Dalai Lama, for example. Let's say that.
Better.
That's probably a closer fit to how I perceive you. I don't see you as Donald Trump, but you know, like if you know, unfortunately, if I was to hold up a photo of you and hold up a photo of the Dalai Lama and say to somebody walking down the street, who do you think's more important? They'd say,
Yeah.
oh, Dalai Lama, because I know the Dalai Lama and da-da-da-da-da. But I think it's like, well, no, titles and positions and all these things, they don't matter. We are all, in essence, at that higher level, all the same. We're all immortal beings.
Yeah.
You know? And it would just remove all separateness. But I don't think people are ready for that yet. And
well, no. Well, that's a hard thing. Well, because you have to let go of your identity in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember because, and I don't know if I jotted that down. I don't think I did. I jotted down some notes from Tolle's book, A New Earth. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
I never say it right. Anyways, I didn't jot that one down, but he talked about that and how, he was talking about different roles in society, maybe different classes of society, and how they were necessary, or it's necessary to have those different levels or classes, but your inner soul or whatever is equal to everybody's.
Yeah.
Because some people are more important, and he didn't use the word important. I'm trying to think of the word he used. But there are some people who play a more important role. That's maybe the better way to say it. The role they play in society is more important, but the person they are inside is not more important. So it's separating, and I think that's what he was getting to. Now that I'm kind of talking it through, it's to separate your role versus who you are, who your being is. Because he talks about being human, a human being. And he says you have a human part of you, which is your role, and you have your being part of you, which is your consciousness. And so, yeah, your human part might be more important than someone else, or what you're doing in the world maybe has more significance than what someone else is doing. But at the end of the day, your being isn't anymore.
I've got a question on that, actually.
Yeah.
So do you think, because that makes sense, but do you think that is a hindrance, like the way we live and the way we create roles and importance, is that a hindrance, do you think, to people actually waking up to the fact that they are that high being?
Probably, but that's probably a lot of ego. Because I think if you take, say, okay, so we'll talk about university, because you're at university. So you take the dean of the school versus the janitor at the school. Well, obviously, the dean of the school has a lot more responsibility, prestige, and I guess generally speaking, what he does for the school is more important, in that he's keeping the whole school running. But at the same time, the janitor is important in keeping the school running as well. And they could both be just as happy and find just as much meaning in what they're doing, depending on who they are or who their being is. Or, you know, the janitor could be completely fulfilled because he loves seeing people. He gets to see people in the hall every day and chat with them. And that's what he loves to do. And he loves to know he's helping out. Whereas the dean might be completely miserable because he's been chasing all these certifications and degrees and titles his whole life that don't have any meaning to him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's really true. And I think we need to consider those things.
Yep.
Because, I think you can find fulfillment wherever you are. But, and it would be exhausting, you think, to get to, you know, some of these levels in society. You have to go through a lot of painful, long hours, you know, all these things. And it's like, is it worth it though? And I can guarantee so many of these people, because I've been there, you get to that point that you've been striving to get to. Right. And then you go, okay, like I can guarantee you, as soon as you get appointed to a position of, say, the dean or whatever it is, like you will feel fulfilled. You'll probably go and have a party and celebrate with your friends, and everyone will be really excited. But then it will fade. It will 100% fade, and then it'll be, okay, well, what's next? Like, all right, well, I want to move to the next level, or I want my school to be the best school ever, or it's never ending in that pursuit. That's why we probably need to pause and say, okay, well, can I find happiness in this moment right now? And you can, 100% can. But I just think we have been programmed, that, and the world doesn't make it easy for you to switch off to that. Like, that's why it's so easy for you to become unconscious again, because we've constructed a society that will make you unconscious, like, very easily.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what it's meant to do.
Yeah,
because you can't control people who are conscious.
Exactly right. It would be
very much our society works on control. I mean, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Whether you want to believe it or whether you want to argue it or not, that's just the way the world is. I guess the sooner you're more aware of that, the better too, because you just accept it, that's how it is, and you move on. But everything in our world is meant to control people. And I very much believe, kind of going back to religion is meant to control people. Because I kind of feel like, so now we'll go into this. And what we're trying to encourage people to do in one of our points is to kind of create their own definition of what God means to them and not settle for what someone else has told you God is. Because I think that's how you truly find God, is through yourself and what is right to you and what feels right to you. But the point I was going to make is, about Jesus. So, like, I think that there was a person named Jesus. And I mean, I don't necessarily believe that he died for our sins and all this stuff, but I do believe there was a person named Jesus, and I think he was very conscious. And I think that they didn't like that he was conscious. And so that's why he ended up getting killed, because he was threatening the social order.
Yeah.
And he was like converting people. Converting, that's probably not the right way to say it, but helping other people become conscious. And that was seen as a threat to the king, whichever king it was. I can't even remember now.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm a great person to be talking about religion here. But
look, we just don't take it that seriously.
Yes. He was seen as a threat. So that's why he got killed. And I think everything that was written about him was trying to teach us a lot of lessons, great lessons. And I think they just got misconstrued along the way because whoever wrote these books saw that they could control people with them. So they twisted these stories around to be able to exert control over people.
Yeah.
So because, there's so many great lessons that Jesus was teaching, but those don't come through in religion a lot. Like even love your neighbor. But at the same time, religions are constantly at war with each other. And it's like, okay, but Jesus told us to love our neighbor. So, I mean, something as simple as that.
Well, yeah.
Or turn the other cheek, all this stuff.
But like Eckhart Tolle is really good at explaining these things, and he talks about the Buddha in the same way he talks about Jesus. And it wasn't until he explained some of these meanings, like, the meek will inherit the world. I think that's the quote, just like the generic ones that we all wouldn't really understand. But then he makes it translatable. He doesn't say this religion here is more important than this one. He just says these people or these teachers were, as you say, very conscious, and they were just trying to explain, in a time potentially where, people didn't want to listen.
Right. And people wouldn't listen now, if you think about it. Like if somebody came here now proclaiming to be like Jesus was, I mean, he'd get locked up in a mental institution, he or she. You know what I mean, though? I mean, people wouldn't listen to that. They'd think he was off his rocker. So, but for some reason, I don't know. It's so funny to me. They're the same people who would wholeheartedly believe in the story of Christ, like word for word, would also condemn someone if they were to come here today and say that they were Jesus.
They would say it's blasphemous, wouldn't they?
Right. I know. It's like, how do you know? But but I do have some Eckhart stuff here that I did jot down.
Yes, please tell us.
So here we go. These are just random, but they're interesting, and it's a good examples of what you were just saying of how he intertwines or retranslates, I guess, the Bible. This is my favorite one. So he said the word sin, translated from ancient Greek, means to miss the mark. So to sin means to miss the point of human existence, to live unskillfully and blindly, and thus to suffer and cause suffering. And that, I just love that, because that makes so much sense to me. And when I read that, I'm like, yes, that makes sense if that's what sin would be, because I actually wrote in a post that something along the lines of, like, if you're not living up to your true potential or trying to reach your full potential, isn't that the ultimate sin? Because you're missing the point of life. And so then when I read this from Tolle, I'm like, hey, I kind of said that before. I'm like, it's awesome. What else did he say about, there was so much good stuff. Oh, here's the one, because we were just talking about this. So he also said, all religions are equally true and equally false, depending on how you use them. If you use them in service of the ego or in service of the truth. So if you're using them in order to create an identity for yourself and separate yourself from people, then it's false. That's a false religion. Whereas if you're using it to try to create oneness with everyone, spread love and happiness and all that good stuff, then that would be a true religion, is what I take from that. And then he says, laws, commandments, rules, and regulations are necessary for those who are cut off from who they are, the truth within. They prevent the worst excesses of the ego. So that's what they were meant for, is to try to control us, basically, is what he was saying there, is that all the commandments and the rules in the Bible and all that are meant to kind of save us from our egos, because we're not conscious enough to do it on our own. Basically. Yeah, I know. But it makes so much sense. I'd love to sit down with him and just like go through the Bible, like.
Well, you know, it's funny actually that you say that, because like I always thought I would love to meet Eckhart Tolle, and if Eckhart Tolle is listening,
of course he is.
I would like to meet you. No, but I almost don't. I almost worry about meeting someone like him or some other really interesting teacher, because what if they disappoint you? What if they so they're saying all these incredibly amazing things about consciousness. Right. What if you met them and they weren't conscious? Like, what if they acted like a rock star and were like, I'm sorry, I'm too cool for you, I'm not signing your book or whatever?
Yeah.
I'd be worried about that, you know?
Well, that's your ego.
Is that my ego?
Yeah, because if you were conscious, you wouldn't worry about that, because you would accept that person for who they are.
That's a good point. See, she's calling me out.
I know. I see. I'm learning.
No, in a good way. Yeah, thank you.
No, I mean, okay. Fair. To be fair,
true.
I was reading Tolle's book before the show. To be fair, but it was either something I read yesterday or today. But he actually said that's part of consciousness too. Is just accepting people where they are and for who they are, and not trying to change them, or not trying to put your own perceptions onto them, or project yourself onto them, project your expectations. I don't know.
That's a good lesson right there.
There we go. See?
Thank you very much. There you go. That's how you do it, guys. Don't settle for your own. See, because that's just something that's been in my head for a while, and I'd settled for that being my opinion of that thing. I hadn't actually sat back and considered it like you just said, in line with what we've been talking about throughout the show. So,
well, no, because that's what we do. That's what our brains do. Until someone calls you out on it. What was our last point? We better make sure that we're hitting it. We hit. So don't settle for believing you can't change your mindset. We did talk about that. We talked about God. Don't settle for thinking you have to be religious to believe in God. And the last one was don't settle for someone else's explanation of the reason you're here. Create your own. We didn't really talk about the reason we're here. Do we want to talk about that quickly? Because we're running a little long on time, but that's probably an important point to hit. Yeah. Because I guess so I know you said you had been having a conversation with someone who's talking about past lives.
Yeah, this was a really interesting
I am interested in that, and maybe that would play into this a bit, because assuming we do have past lives, I guess what's the point of keep coming back?
Yeah, I thought about this yesterday.
Okay.
So I'm still getting my head around it. But the person I was speaking to about this was very, very confident that this is, because I this is the first time I'd met this person, and I asked the question straight away. Okay, so like, what's the meaning of life? And I thought, oh,
that sounds about right. That's an Adam thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't recommend you do that with everyone.
Right.
Like, if you're on a first date, don't ask the person across the table what's the meaning of life. Anyways, I digress. So I asked that question. So if we come from energy, like I asked Gabby last week, if we come from energy, we then have X number of years on Earth in this form.
Yep.
And then we go back to energy. Why do we have this kind of moment of being here, physically manifested on this planet or wherever? Right. Because I'm still getting my head around that. And this person said to me, well, I like to think of it as contributing to your next life.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, I don't really get that. And so he talked about that we have past lives and we're past identities. And that past identity then feeds into your next identity.
Yep.
And each identity you have, or each time you're here, you obviously, you could have kids, you could have friends and family, and then they're doing the same. They're creating, they're basically feeding energy or information into the next kind of person, right? So, for example, he said to me, like, you obviously have a daughter. So not only in this life are you influencing you in the next life you have, but you're influencing Rose in the next life she has. And this idea of it just continues on like that. And I was thinking about this more yesterday in that I don't think really there would ever be an end to this. Like we like to think that one day the universe will end and da-da-da. Like it just
or you just keep getting more conscious, because that kind of piggybacks, sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
That kind of piggybacks on what Gabby was saying too, because she was talking about, I don't know if she used the term past lives, but that's what she was talking about. Is like that every time you come back a little more conscious than the last time. And that, not to belittle, if that's the right word, but I can't think of the right word. But anyways, like not to look down on other people who aren't as conscious as you because they're on a different part of their journey than you are.
Yeah.
But and that's hard to do. But anyways, that's hard for me to do, I will admit. I can be a little pretentious that way. So
no. Anyways, that's just the construct of Amanda.
That's just the construct of Amanda. She's a little pretentious sometimes. But yeah, she was talking too about how your energy continues and you keep. So I wonder if the point is, so we're gonna get to the bottom of this at some point. What is the point of life? No, we're gonna ask enough people that we're gonna come to an answer. But I wonder if it's just to get to the point where you're so conscious that you're just pure energy.
Well, that's
I wonder if you get to a point where you're not even a person anymore.
Well, that's what I wonder, right? So to your point about like, don't judge other people who are really unconscious because they're in a different part of their journey. Yeah. Like, is the end state for everyone, is that every person, but I mean, people are being born every day, like born out of the energy and, and then people are dying and then what are they reforming as other entities? Like, yeah, I just can't see an end to it, I guess, because like, I was thinking yesterday, does it end with every single person is conscious, fully conscious? Yeah. I'm like, well, no, I don't think there's ever going to be an end. I think
I don't think there'll be an end, but that might be the end for that person. Or yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe. Is that what it means to become like an angel? Because they always talk about God and angels being light, like made of light, or. And again, I haven't read the Bible in a very long time, but for some reason that rings true. Isn't that how they're kind of talked about as being light?
Yeah.
And so light would be energy.
Cool idea? Like wherever you are right now, isn't it a cool idea to think rather than I'm going to die and I'm going to be judged based on the fact that I did X, Y, and Z wrong in this lifetime.
Right.
And then I'm going to go to hell and I'm going to have however many years. And that's not to talk down the concepts out of Christianity. As I said before, if you feel that gives you meaning, and that drives your life and makes you happy, that's fine. But I think it's like more inclusive and nice to think of it as, well, you know, at the end of this life, if I, in my life, and I've still done a lot of things unconsciously, you know, I will come back, and you can call it reincarnation, whatever it is. I'll come back in another form, and I'll be more informed than I was previously, more conscious, more likely to make the right decisions. And that when you eventually die, I suppose, or return to the energy that you came from, you will be a more conscious being. So you won't go through that judgment and stuff, because you've already made it to where you need to be. You've kind of gone through your whole life's journey, and it could have taken 100 lives. You know, you've had to go through 100 things, because maybe that's just your journey, whereas maybe somebody else has gone through 2 or 3. You know, but I think it's a nicer way of looking at it, because then, you know, when you're in those final moments of your life, rather than thinking, oh my gosh, like, where am I going to go now? I'm going to go into oblivion, or I'm going to go to hell, or wherever. You think, well, I've concluded this part of the journey, and I'm now on to the next step, and we'll see how far I came in this lifetime, you know, and where I'll go next. So, I don't know. We don't.
Well, it's interesting because it just made me think of this. And honestly, I've never thought of it this way before. So for the audience, this is an authentic thought that I'm just thinking of now. But I wonder if that's what is meant by hell, is that you keep coming back. And maybe if you did something really bad, I don't even know how you define bad, but however you want to define bad. If you did something really bad, you come back with a pretty shitty life when you're, you know, your next life starts out pretty shitty. And then you have to try to get better from there. And maybe that's what hell is. Because if you think of it, this world is pretty hellish sometimes. And life is not that easy. So maybe that is your punishment, if that's how you want to look at it. Yeah. Using Christian terms, like that's your punishment or whatever, is you got to keep coming back until you get it right.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an interesting way of looking at it, I think.
I know.
So,
I think we're gonna get this figured out.
we will figure it out.
I mean,
and I think,
why not?
I think, you know, if you, me, and Gabby catch up in 6 or 12 months' time,
that'd be awesome.
And you know, and in that time, let's chat about what we've learned. You know, because I think we'll be in another part of the journey. But yeah, I think it makes things more. It just makes things easier to navigate.
Yes.
Like exactly. if you view them as, you know, you're basically on a journey to achieve consciousness, and what you're perceiving right now and getting annoyed about is the construct, you know, and that you can change that construct.
Right, exactly. Because we live in a sea of potential. That's what Gabby said quite a few times last week, was we live in a sea of potential. So if you think of it that way, it's pretty empowering. Instead of living in fear, you can live in a state of feeling empowered.
Yes.
And feeling connected to other people. And that's really the choice that you get to make. So yeah. Awesome. So should we wrap things up?
I think we should. So I mean,
we've just solved the meaning of life right here. So
we have. So, you know, here it is, guys. We've solved it.
I don't know what else we can possibly talk about.
I know, honestly, we're done. But how good is that? By episode 10, I mean, what other podcast has solved the big question? You know,
exactly.
That's my ego coming out. I've got to go back a step. The 3 things that we covered were: don't settle for believing that you can change your mindset or even your genetic makeup. Don't settle for thinking you have to be religious to believe in God. And don't settle for someone else's explanation for the reason you're here. Create your own. So if you feel we haven't covered those, or you've got any more thoughts, please put them on YouTube, or send them through to us on LinkedIn, or send them through to cheers-to-not-settling@gmail.com. We'd love to get people's thoughts. Yes. Because it's a big conversation.
Yes. And don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and like the video and comment on the video if you would, because all those things will help us get traction. And don't forget also to check us out on Coffee, if you'd be so generous, because there you can donate as little as $1 to help us keep this thing going. Hey, we've already, for just $1, we've already answered the question, what is the meaning of life? That's got to be worth $1.
It's worth the money, you know?
So at any rate, I think that we've gone on enough. So we better just say cheers to not settling.
Cheers to not settling.
All right,
Bye.
take care.